4-1. Away at West Ham, 4-1 as well. But to their credit, there have also been some impressive points. Away at Brighton, got a 0-0 draw. They drew at home to Fulham, who are no mugs. You know, they've been doing well this season. And as well, in the last two games, if it wasn't for 90th minute goals, they would have got 4 points. And last minute goals have cost them 4 points in the last two games. So, you know, also drew at home to Ipswich 2-2 as well. Drew at home to Aston Villa 2-2. So, you know, draws to Aston Villa, draws to Brighton, draws to Fulham. That tells me that this is not a team to be taken too lightly, and it's also not a team that are just going to roll over. They have gotten points in games against some really good teams, and points against teams where, like in terms of Brighton, we've dropped points to them, and they got a point against them. So that was Brighton away from home. They kept a clean sheet. They were able to keep them out for 90 minutes, get a 0-0 draw. That suggests to me it's not necessarily going to be plain sailing, but there is also games where there's evidence that they can crumble if they go behind, and if they are under the cosh too much, they can be hit quickly. Against Man City, took the lead after 7 minutes. By minute 16, they were 3-1 down. They crumbled. Against West Ham, they conceded in the first minute, equalised on the 6th minute, and conceded 2 goals in 4 minutes in the second half, and were 3-1 down and crumbled and ended up losing the game 4-1. Against Brentford, they were 2-0 up and ended up just before half-time conceding 2 goals in 2 minutes, and in half-time the game was 2-2, and they ended up losing the game 4-3 in the last minute, having dragged themselves back in the game, but they crumbled in the last minute. So they definitely have a propensity of conceding late goals, and they have a propensity of conceding goals in quick succession, which is something that we are very good at. In many, many games, we have hit teams in quick moments. One in against West Ham, hit teams in quick moments, and against Brighton, although we end up losing the game, hit teams with 2 goals in very quick moments. We do have against Aston Villa 2 goals in 4 minutes. So that is something that Ipswich are vulnerable to, and that is something that we are definitely capable of. So I think we should definitely be focused on making sure we're putting Ipswich under pressure, we're winning the ball high up the pitch, making sure we're forcing mistakes out of them. I saw against West Ham, a few of their West Ham's goals came from Ipswich losing the ball in their defensive third, West Ham pressing them high and giving away the ball in really, really bad areas. And Spurs were able to capitalise on those moments. West Ham were able to capitalise on those moments, force mistakes out of Ipswich, and obviously they were able to get the better of them and ended the game 4-1. They can be quite compact and, you know, be quite devastating on the counter. Liam Delap, who's been a bit of a revelation for Ipswich this season, I think 5 goals in the Premier League. He's a really good ball carrier, really good strength from the ball, and if you allow him to turn and run into space, he can carry the ball. I did see a moment against Brighton away, carries the ball from inside his own half with brilliant running power, gets the ball into the Brighton penalty area, has a strike across the face of goal, hits the post, inside of the post, but his running power, so powerful, so strong, and had enough running power to get to the Brighton penalty area from his own half. So he's a player we need to be wary of, especially if Romero's not fit. We'll get into the team news in a bit, but he's one who's got great running power. Jack Clarke, a new signing from Sunderland, who's had a great time of it in the Championship. He's done really, really well. Jack Clarke in the Championship last couple of years. Come to the Premier League, done decent. He's also a threat on the counter, decent on transitions. He can be a player to be very wary of. Sammy Smodics as well in that number 10 position has really good timing of his runs, and he can be a difficult player to play against. Had a bucket load of goal contributions in the Championship. Omari Hutchinson on the right hand side as well. He's a player who can be tricky on his day. But obviously Calvin Phillips, he is suspended after being sent off last week against Leicester in the game they were winning 1-0. One player I think is definitely one to watch out for, and is something we've struggled with when it comes to fullbacks getting too much joy, is Leif Davis. He is a really good left back. He's really good. I think he's a left back who's going to get a big move potentially to a higher standard Premier League team in the summer if Ipswich go down, because he's got great quality on his left foot. We saw that goal. If you saw his goal against Leicester, you can see how much quality he has. He's got an amazing final delivery. When he gets in the final third, he's got that ability to pick players out, score goals, get assists as well. I think he's a fine left back. He's got good energy to get up and down the left-hand side as well. Defensively, maybe not the strongest, but if you can make up cover for his defensive flaws, there's a very effective left back there in Leif Davis. And that's an area where I feel like sometimes Spurs struggle, that ability to track their fullback all the way back into the defensive zones. Brendan has been getting better at that recently, but it's something that I feel like we do let the opposition fullbacks get too much joy, and I think Leif Davis is definitely a player who, if you give too much space to, he can hurt you, because he's got a wonder of a left foot, and I really think he can definitely be getting a good move in the summer. I'm a big fan of Leif Davis. But when it comes to Ipswich, how they play, I think they've been unlucky in a few games in the Premier League. They've definitely always seemed to be, apart from the West Ham game, been in the game for large parts of a lot of these games. And I think the West Ham game is definitely a bit of an outlier when it comes to some of the heavy defeats they've been taken. Really unlucky in their last say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the last 6 or 7 games, a lot of very close results. 0-0 draw away at Brighton, 2-2 at home to Villa, 4-3 away at Brentford, 1-1 against Leicester. Some really close games and some close results, and it's not going to be an easy game at the start if we don't really put them under pressure and press them and make things uncomfortable for them. If we let them settle into the game, they do have that ability to sit in and be compact, and Kieran McKenna has shown that he has an ability in this division to get his teams be competitive and get his teams in the game, and they've got some good quality in the front line. Clark, Smodics, Delap, Omari Hutchinson, there is quality there. I look at their backline though, and let's be honest, it can be got at. I do think that backline can be got at. They're not the best at playing out the back, and if you press them like we are capable of pressing teams, with Solanke, running at players and hounding them, with Brennan Johnson and hopefully Son fully fit after being taken over half time, with Decky and Sarr back in the team, I think our press could be a bit too much for them, and I think that is where we're going to get joy, and that's where we can put them under serious pressure. Funnily enough, when it comes to Ipswich, in our head-to-head, we are on a run of 3 consecutive defeats against them, going back to 2002 was our last game, losing 2-1 away from home. We then lost 2-1 at home and 3-0 at Portman Road back in 2000. So we are on a run of defeats to Ipswich. Haven't beaten them since August 2000, a 3-1 win at White Hart Lane. So it's not been a good run. I'm not sure you can make too many judgments in terms of the head-to-head. But we are on a run of 3 consecutive defeats to Ipswich, so you could argue they have our number right now. But I don't think mobile phones were even popular back then, so hopefully it's going to be a different case on Sunday. Obviously we do go into this game massive favourites, and talking about the team news for Tottenham. Werner's still out, Mikey Moore's still out due to illness. Odebear and Richarlison are long-term absentees, but in positive news, Coutinho could be back available. So if Romero is available, I think with him and Dragusin in the back, that should be enough to keep Delap quiet. It showed against Villa that was enough to keep Watkins quiet. They physically dominated him. And if we're forcing Ipswich into long passes into Delap, I do think the aggressive nature of both Romero and Dragusin to physically dominate Delap will be enough to make sure Spurs maintain control. Getting Decky back in the centre, his ability to bully his way through with that physicality. I think Sarr just making sure that we're pressing from the front and getting in their faces. Obviously, there'll be a bit of a debate. Do we start with Maddison? Do we start with Sarr? I do think he does start with Sarr, just because I think if we can just press them into oblivion and make sure they're causing mistakes in their backline, that will be the best way to get the easier chances. And I think we've shown in the last few weeks that right now that balance of midfield is really working. If we need a bit more guile and a bit more ingenuity, we still got Maddison to come on and he can pick the lock, and we can go Maddison and Decky if we need to open up Ipswich. But I think from the start, just get Sarr running at them at full pelt, get Kulusevski at full pelt from the middle, get Bentancur in the centre as well. And I just think they might crumble under that pressure, Ipswich. And I think our pressing could be the difference here. That's how I kind of see things. So if I'm predicting a result, I'm going to go 4-1 to Spurs. I think once we break that deadlock and break that rear guard, I think they might crumble under that pressure. They might struggle to really play out the back, and they might struggle to get their front line in the game. And I think the pressing is really where what I predict is going to be the undoing for Ipswich. They have talented players. They might get a goal, especially if Romero's missing. But I do think Tottenham's pressing will be too much for them. So that is why I'm predicting 4-1 to Tottenham. And that is your match preview going into the weekend's action against Ipswich.